Good morning, welcome to New Life Scientific. Today we're going to be talking about your new tissue processor and some of the things you can do while you're waiting to get the unit qualified. This particular video we're going to be showing you with using an ASP 300 by Leica. We'll probably make another video at some other point with the Sakara line. They vary in how you might do some things. When you get your unit, of course, you're gonna be anxious to get your wax installed in your unit, which will go into the 3 wax baths. It's going to take 10 to 20 hours for the wax to melt. So in that time frame, you can be qualifying your unit and learning to use it. There's a little bit to learn. They're fairly simple machines, but there's a lot that goes into what you're going to be doing. You've got all your vessels. Not all of them do you fill up. The blue unit, you leave it empty. Your other units are going to be on what your formula you decide to do, which is another thing you should be doing, is what formula you want to use to make your tissue blocks. The last 3 there are typically used with xylene, alcohol, and water. Those are your cleaning fluids, but we'll talk about that a little bit. So you get your unit, you turn it on, you're going to get to a screen like this on the Leica. Okay, with these are your running programs. To get started, you're going to be dealing in the setup of the unit, which is a menu item. So you go to menu. These let you do some of the other functions of the unit. Right now we want to go into the more unit. When you get into the more, of course, there's one of the boxes that says system setup. That's a great place to start. Of course, time and date is going to be somewhat important to you at some point down the line. So you want to make sure those are set. There's also a good reason why you want one of these on a battery backup unit, by the way. You can set your brightness, your volume, buzzer. If you're if you're going to have this into a room in the back, you might want to set your volume up. If it's in a place where you're going to be working all day, this particular model, the beep is very loud. There is also a way to hook up an external alarm so you can hear it. Anyway, here's where you get to start to making some decisions on how you're going to run your unit. Do you want your stations to run sequentially or by age? Would be one of the other options. Your wax baths, you can set the order you want those to go by. Do you want have to have user levels? Because there's a supervisor level and a user level. Supervisor can change programs on the fly, can do anything they want on the system. A user level, they can run programs, that's all they can do. That's still quite a bit, don't get me wrong. And you can set different passwords, but all users have the same password. Anyway, back to once you've made your decisions there, I would recommend starting without a password, but that's not for me to decide. That is one of the decisions you get to make. So we go back. Now we want to go to installation. You can call your instruments by different names, especially helpful if you're running more than one. You can also set your elevation. Your pressure is going to be different at different elevations. So your altitude that this machine is going to be running at is a good idea. No, I can't tell you what your altitude is. That's a local thing. Most everything else on that is set, but you can change your language if you want it to be in a different language. One of the other things that you're going to decide is what reagents you're going to use. This one, typically when you get a unit from us, you're going to have reagents names in here, but that's not always true. and it may not, and from how you get it from somebody else, I don't know how you're going to do that. But anyway, either way, this information may have to be set up. So these are ones that the very common reagents that would use: formalin, different degrees of concentrations of ethanol, xylene, wax, whatnot. You get to make some decisions on what they are, and in case that you need to, to create your own, maybe you might want a 75% ethanol. You can do that. You go in here, you tell it you want to insert, you give it a name, 75%. Tell it okay. Now that's in the list. You tell it what group it is. Of course, in tissue processing, there's fixing, clearing, dehydrating, and wax, and then your cleaners, your 3 cleaning steps. You tell it which group that this one will go in. This is 75%, so this is the dehydrating, diluted. Tell it okay. Now it's in that group. Once we have our list created, we can tell it what each individual bottle we're going to use. You're going to want to plan this out based on what programs that you're going to want. Different types of tissue, different thicknesses are going to have different programs. You do that. Once we do the back, it's going to save this screen. Now we want to go to stations. We set up what is in each bottle. So for bottle 1, typically goes formalin, but maybe you would have buffered formalin. You do that, you go into the name. There's your list of names that you've created in your other list. Okay, when you hit the, okay. So you set it up based on what's going to be in each individual bottle. So if that I wanted to be ethanol, I wouldn't, but anyway, it's changed. Change it back. When I save back, it's going to save that. And it's going to mark them as empty. And this is one of the things that once you fill up your bottles, you need to tell them whether they're full or empty. So that you go into, to do that, you go into stations. Actually, you do that from a different screen. You can also assign your colors to your reagent group. And this will make more sense in this next screen. Your fixing group would be red. Formalin is a fairly hazardous chemical, so that is generally done in red. Your dilutants can be in different colors as well. There's your list of color choices that you have. So we go, now that we've done that, we've set up most of our things there, we can go back to our reagent status. Here's where you mark whether you're what they are, how many days it goes from change. One of the other screens does give you the chance to ask how many blocks that are in each process. So your sample blocks, if the more sample blocks that are in a block, the quicker it's going to use up your reagent. You can set that up, and you can tell it how many is the limit of where it should be changed, or by days. Again, those are all in the manuals. Those are all things you need to decide what works for your program and how you want to monitor it. If you're only doing a few samples, you probably want to go by blocks. If you're doing heavy samples, you might want to do it by days. So, anyway, when we want to mark this as full, we mark it as full. I'm going to leave that empty to show you on the next section. Now, one of the things, now that we've got all of our reagents, our stations, we've made some of those decisions, we can go in and test the pumping ability of the unit. Very easy to do. on the Leicas. Here's the smart screen. The smart screen takes you to the manual operations menu. You'll see a screen that looks very similar to this when it's running as well. Very easy to determine. You notice the colors. Formalin's in red. Now you notice number 2, it's got a red block around the station number, but it's a gray area because that one is still marked empty. So it knows that. But if we want to pump from station 1 to the retort, we would select the 2 and press fill. But we don't have liquid in the unit yet because it's actually in liquid in vessel 2. You fill these, you can fill those from them. You can buy a hose that allows you to pump in directly. But we're gonna put this in 2 for you. You'll hear them click when they go in properly. You want to make sure the front of those are in a nice straight row. Now with the black line selecting those 2 items, we can tell it to fill that retort. It asks, are you sure? Yes, we are. It starts the process, gives you a graphical representation of what's going on. The same is going to be true for draining the retort. You are going to want to do this for every one of your vessels when you first get it to make sure that it's pumping in and out of each vessel. There's a lot of lines in here that can get clogged, especially actually in your formalins. Anyway, so you want to run this to make sure it's pumping. On these units, it does have a latch here on the retort. Retort, you'll probably end up calling it a sink at your unit. We'll show you in that in just a second. That has to be locked so that it can build pressure and vacuums in your retort. It's going to be done any second. It also gives you a monitor that tells you how much pressure is in the sink, the retort, what the temperature is, what your wax temperature is here. Now you'll notice while it's finishing up, we don't have any wax in these. It knows that. We typically do not ship with wax in them. We don't trim. Anyway, now this is complete. There goes the buzzer. We're going to tell it okay. And then handle opens. Now it can open it up and you're full. Okay. There are several sensors there, an overflow sensor and a full sensor. You do want to clean those between when you're running programs. It will advise you to do that, to gently clean those sensors. Once you know that you're getting full, then you can, to bring it back down, go to your next vessel, pump in and out. Once that is done, then you have to decide on your program. That's what we're going to be doing here as soon as we're done, is showing a little bit about programs. You can also check your status of your reagents on this screen. You can set your temperature. We do recommend that to flush these at certain intervals. Every 6 months is probably a good idea, where you fill your formalin vessels with water. You pump them into the retort and let them get to full temperature, 55 degrees, and then pump them back. This flushes any salts out of your system. These have all been done by our staff on every unit that we sell. We run several overnight runs where all the vessels are filled. We bring them into the retort, heat them up to full sink, then bring them back. Each unit goes through at least 2 of those. Through the day, we run normally 6 to 8, 10, 12 short cycle runs, which short cycle run is your 1 minute, 5 minute. They're short intervals on each station. That way we know that they're getting flushed, that the pump is good, it's not making loud noises, that it's a good consistent unit. Those are what we do. Some of the other people do the same thing, others do not. So other than that, you're going to set up your program to how you want it. There are different formulas. We're running two formulins, several different levels of alcohol dilution, and then a full alcohol cups. And typically, the typical is 2 formalin, full strength, 2 or 3 diluted alcohol, 3 full strength alcohol, which are used for helping dry the unit, fill the cell with alcohol. Okay, it's done. Anyway, after the full alcohol, you're going to run some xylene. Then you've got your cleaners down here. Anyway, back to programming. That was a warning that we're not cleaning the sink. Anyway, back to programs. We're going to edit and view. Again, we're still in the menu functions. Program. Here's the list of programs that are programmed into the unit. In this case, sometimes you won't get any programs on there. You'll often see one that are labeled short test, no wax, long test, no wax. Those are what we do for our overnight and short programs. The long one takes 10 hours to run because it's running an hour in each unit. Our short test, no wax, takes about an hour. So anyway, we have to take a unit and copy it or delete it. There are 2 things, or we can edit it. We're going to edit it in this case. Here's the different steps that we have. You don't go by the station, it goes by reagent name. So if we want to add a second step in here, we copy. And if I want to make a whole list of them, I can go ahead and copy it. Now I can go ahead and tell it which reagent I want to use, how long that I want to use it for. That's in hours and minutes, by the way. This program that was running here would not be compatible. Formalin is not compatible after alcohol. What temperature you want to run those units at. 50 would be rather warm for a formalin. Whether you want it pressure or vacuumed while it's in the retort, and how long you want it to take it to drain, and where you want your delay to be. Typically you want your delay on your last step, and then it'll wait for you to clean, to remove your samples and tell it it's done. Then it'll get ready to start the cleaning program. Those are some functions that you're going to need to do and decide on what to do when you get your ASP 300 Leica tissue processor. Thank you very much.